Breaking Through with Kristin Rowe-Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising on the We Act Radio Network. I'm your host, and we have a great show for you today. First up, we have Senator Gail Golden. She just made amazing history, passing some significant and serious legislation in Rhode Island. Next up, we get the latest and the lowdown on what's really happening with immigration policy reform as the bill has moved from the Senate to the House. After that, we hear important details about what to do with kids in the summer, ideas, interesting ways to save money while kids stay active, and we close up the show with a report right in from our own Moms Rising Gloria Pan about how we took over Congress this week with little cows. First up, I'd like to welcome Senator Gail Golden. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be on the show today.
Well, Senator, I have to tell you, the entire Moms Rising team, me, my whole family, we all stood up and gave a standing ovation to the state of Rhode Island this week as you passed paid family leave. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to be standing inside the Rhode Island legislature as that vote was happening?
It was an extraordinary moment, and first I would like to say a big thank you to all of the Moms Rising people who supported us both nationally and in Rhode Island and made phone calls and sent those emails. As somebody who has been a long time subscriber to the emails, it was so great to see an action alert on my own piece of legislation, so thank you very much. It was really a wonderful moment for me because I knew it was just going to be a wonderful moment for all of Rhode Island and really something that people would care about across the country, that we were finally seeing a leave policy that really met the needs of working families and businesses in our state.
And we were absolutely thrilled. So we got the bill moving, you got the bill moving, but where were you standing when it passed? Can you give us a little bit of an image of what the room looked like, where you were, and how it happened?
Sure. So the way legislation works in Rhode Island is we have both House bills and Senate bills, and they're companion pieces to each other. And so each side of the General Assembly passes their legislation, and then they cross over. So even though my Senate bill had already passed the Senate, I had to have it crossed and be passed by the House, and then the House bill had to come back to the Senate. So there were many moments in which it was moving to momentum, and I got to see that vote. For me, I was, as a state senator, in the chamber in Rhode Island, which is a beautiful historic building, and really was just an incredible moment to see my fellow legislators who had given this considerable amount of thought press their green lights to support this piece of legislation.
I love the image of just a room full of green lights voting yay on paid family leave. One of the things that we know is that over 177 other countries have some form of paid leave for new moms after a new baby comes into the house. But the United States of America is not one of them. There are very few places in the U.S., though, where you can have access to paid leave, like California and Rhode Island and New Jersey. And so you are breaking ground by pushing this policy through in Rhode Island. And you're breaking ground in a great way, because studies show that having access to some form of paid leave after the birth of a child actually makes it so that moms are more likely to be able to be back in the labor force within a year, are less likely to need to rely on longer government entitlement programs, and actually that it's a win-win-win-win for taxpayers, for moms, for families, for babies, and for businesses who don't lose valuable employees. What was the argument that you felt really pushed this policy through Rhode Island?
I think we really focused on how important this was for all of us, for working families and for our economy, because when families are able to deal with that a serious health crisis in their family, because this is not only just for parental leave, but it's also for, if you have a family member who is seriously ill and you need to take a few weeks off to deal with that family emergency and caregive for them. So when workers really have that experience and they're in this crisis moment, they know that there's still going to be money in their pockets and they don't have to worry about their own economic security now. At the same time, that means they can still be able to go to the grocery store and buy their groceries. They can still deal with the repairs that need to happen on their house. They can deal with those everyday expenses. And that's really how we keep our economy going.
And that link, I think, is crucial. It's important, and too few people are making it. The link between the fact that moms, women, make about 3/4 of consumer purchasing decisions, and that when moms and women don't have money, our consumer-fueled economy just really goes splat. We can't spend money in local grocery stores, local stores that are selling other important goods and services. And so it is so important to make sure that people don't go off a cliff, as many do when they have a baby. In fact, 1/4 of young families are living in poverty. And policies like this one help those families not to go off a financial cliff when they have babies, but to stay on track. So, Senator, what brought you to be the champion on this issue? Did you have any experiences in your own life?
I did. There were, a few different instances in my life that really brought me to think about what this meant for myself and for other families. There were probably two moments in my life that really made me such a passionate advocate for this, and one was my own having my own serious health crisis. I happened to be standing on a balcony, a second-story balcony, and it collapsed, and I fell 6
Oh my gosh!
Broke my back. Was in the hospital, then in a back brace and in physical therapy for a very long time. And thankfully, I don't really have lasting physical effects from that. But my husband, who worked for a small company at the time, didn't even have FMLA leave, and we had just bought our first house. We had all bunches of student loans to pay off. It was a really difficult time for us to have him lose wages by needing to care for me, and we had to make some difficult decisions about what we were really going to be able to do. And so I think that was really the first moment for me in which I saw what that meant to not have the time off 2-3 weeks that would have been critical to help at the beginning, and what that.
And I'm glad you're okay. I mean, that is a devastating issue right there. I can't even imagine. How high up was the balcony?
It was 16 feet. My dog was on it, a new puppy, and she started barking wildly, and so I went out there to get her, and she was totally fine, although completely freaked out by wooden structures for the rest of her life. But
nor you, so I would imagine.
Yes, I am too.
Yeah.
So it was quite,
I would. Now I'm not. Just hearing the story, I'm not doing it.
It was quite a dramatic experience, and in that same year, I became a parent, and really, it was perhaps the most. Even though I worked for an organization that was covered by our federal and state Family Medical Leave Act, so I could take that time unpaid. It was obviously a very complicated time for just our own family's financial stability. And when you apply that for times in which, you need to have that economic security because you have a new child in your family, or you're dealing with mounting medical bills, the last thing you really need to worry about is not having a paycheck.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what's important, I think, is the whole sort of system of what happens after you have a baby. Not only is that first bridge time to bond with the baby, to establish breastfeeding, to recover, very, very important, but it comes right before an incredible moment of expense, which is infant child care. childcare overall costs more than college in most states in our nation. And so the cost of infant childcare is among the highest of expenses in terms of childcare costs. And so if you come out of having unpaid leave versus paid leave into a huge expense of infant childcare, it's very difficult to deal with that in terms of getting back into the labor force. So we hear about that from members all over the country. So we see that there is a system of economic stimulus that needs to be built. And how do you see childcare coming up in Rhode Island, if at all?
How do I see childcare coming up?
Well, do you see it coming up in the Rhode Island legislature in any way, childcare and early learning?
Oh, in terms of trying to create universal childcare.
Or access in any way that, not even necessarily universal, but just improved access, affordability, and quality.
Yeah, so another piece of legislation that I worked on this year and actually addressed some of the child care subsidy that we have in our state, really trying to give people who are in unpaid trainings. So we have these Governor Workforce Board and various other ways in which people go through, 12, 13, 14-week trainings. But if they can't afford childcare, they're never going to be able to get into this training to begin with, which becomes a real barrier to moving into finding a new career. And so one of the things we were able to do in Rhode Island was extend our child care assistance funding to allow parents to be able to use it while they're in these unpaid trainings. So that is, an important small step forward on our child care assistance. We also took a step towards our early education funding, which is certainly something that many of us in the state legislature care about and are trying to figure out ways that we really can fund ongoing services and programs for early education, pre-K and full-day kindergarten.
You are a true champion. You're a true champion. I'm so excited to talk with you. Do you have advice for listeners out there, for moms, dads, aunts, uncles, grandmas, grandpas, or anyone who has ever had a mom who cares about the issue of making sure that we have paid family leave after the birth of a child or a significant medical experience, and things like access to childcare so that parents can go to work and have safe, enriching places for their children to stay while they work? What advice do you have for activists?
Well, I'm a new legislator. I just got elected and just started in January. And as I mentioned, this passion I had for getting this law passed really came from my own personal experiences over 10 years ago. And so my advice is people need to use those personal experiences that they've had for themselves or in their family, talk to their legislators, advocate for it, and if they can't get it done that way, they should run for office themselves.
I love that advice. That is spectacular advice. Well, congratulations on a tremendous, groundbreaking, historic win in Rhode Island, getting paid family medical leave passed. And I look forward to talking with you again soon and hearing about your other wins, because clearly you have a talent for passing what some would think is the impossible. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited. You've inspired me. We're going to take a quick break, but stick around because we'll be right back with our next guest, Wendy Cervantes. She's going to tell us the lowdown on what's really happening inside the Beltway on immigration policy reform and how it's impacting women and children. You've been listening to Breaking Through with Kristin Rowe-Finkbeiner on the We Act Radio Network. We are powered by MomsRising, and we'll be back in just a quick flash.
Hello, this is Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and I want to tell you about my new favorite discovery, Yosemite National Park. I recently went there with my husband and children, and we walked the trails to see the breathtaking waterfalls, admired the grand meadows and giant sequoias. But the future of our national parks is uncertain. Many challenges face our parks today, from polluted air and water to development threats outside their borders and inadequate funding to protect our national heritage. That's why the National Parks Conservation Association recently completed a decade-long assessment of the challenges facing our national parks, along with proposed actions that will ensure our children and grandchildren will be able to enjoy the parks as we have. Our national parks have inspired Americans for nearly 100 years. As we approach the centennial of the National Park Service in 2016, please join us in helping to protect our national park legacy. Find out how at www.npca.org.
We Act Radio is a very proud partner of the Start at Westminster, a harm reduction, prevention, and awareness initiative sponsored by the Westminster Presbyterian Church right here in D.C. START stands for Syringe, Treatment, Advocacy, Resources, Training. These are the core elements of the harm reduction philosophy at START. The goal of this program is to reduce transmissions of HIV, hepatitis, and other bloodborne infectious diseases by empowering those at risk of infection with the tools, resources, and referrals they need to take charge of their health. Over the past year, the Start at Westminster tested over 1,600 people, and they're averaging about 150 tests each month. And of course, with the proper funding, that number could go even higher. For more information on this terrific program, go to www.startatwestminster.org or visit the Westminster Presbyterian Church, 400 I Street Southwest, right here in Washington, D.C.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.
Hello, this is Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and I want to tell you about my new favorite discovery, Yosemite National Park. I recently went there with my husband and children, and we walked the trails to see the breathtaking waterfalls, admired the grand meadows and giant sequoias. But the future of our national parks is uncertain. Many challenges face our parks today, from polluted air and water to development threats outside their borders and inadequate funding to protect our national heritage. That's why the National Parks Conservation Association recently completed a decade-long assessment of the challenges facing our national parks, along with proposed actions that will ensure our children and grandchildren will be able to enjoy the parks as we have. Our national parks have inspired Americans for nearly 100 years. As we approach the centennial of the National Park Service in 2016, please join us in helping to protect our national park legacy. Find out how at www.npca.org.
Hi, I'm Maya Rockeymoore, host of Pivot Point with Maya Rockeymoore, a show bringing you diverse views on the news. Is America heading towards third world status? And what do wealthy millionaires and billionaires have to do with driving our economy into a ditch? We explore all of these issues and how the political system has been co-opted to aid and abet the largest scam to drive resources from low-income populations to wealthy individuals in this nation. Join us every Sunday at 3 p.m. on weactradio.com, 1480 a.m. in the D.C. area, to listen to the latest news on issues such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, what's happening in our national political debates around these very important issues, and what our likely future will be in this nation. It's every Sunday at 3 p.m. on weactradio.com, 1480 a.m.
Packers,
Vikings,
Red State,
Blue State.
We come from different places.
Uptown,
Downtown.
We come to different conclusions.
half empty,
Half full.
But no matter how different we are, we're all connected, and we can all make a difference. That's why United Way brings people, expertise, and resources together to improve the education, income, and health of our communities, the building blocks for a better life. When we live united, our efforts, magnified by others, add up to real change. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly, so do our communities. But real change won't happen without you.
Live united.
So let's look beyond our differences.
Live united.
One by one, let's make a difference. Let's reach out a hand to one and influence the condition of all.
Live united.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.
Welcome back to Breaking Through with Kristin Rowe-Finkbeiner, powered by MomsRising on the We Act Radio Network. We have a great show for you today, and right now we have coming in to tell you the real deal about what's going on with immigration policy reform, Wendy Cervantes. She's the Vice President of Immigration and Child Rights Policy for First Focus. Welcome, Wendy. Wendy is here, and she has been following what's going on in D.C. She's been following what's happening between the Senate bill and the House, because, of course, we have to have immigration policy reform pass the Senate and then also pass the House. There's been a lot going on this week in the House with talking about whether there'll be one bill or multiple bills broken up into sub-policies. Wendy, what are you hearing?
Well, we're still hearing the same thing about a piecemeal approach being the strategy right now in the House. But we are very heartened to see that based on the Republican meeting that happened this past Wednesday, that there is appetite to do something, and that there's generally agreement that we can't do nothing on immigration reform. It's just our hope that moving forward that whether it's a piecemeal approach or a comprehensive approach, that any type of bill in the House or multiple bills will include a pathway to citizenship, not only for dreamers, but for their families, for the full 11 million immigrants living in our communities today.
You know, I have to tell you, watching Congress and the slow movement of basically any and all bills going through the process, the political process, I was a little sad when I saw the House come out with their decision that they were going to break it up into piecemeal, because I had the thought, which is, oh my gosh, it takes, like moving a mountain or worse to get one bill through. How in the heck are, 7 or 8 bills going to get through? Did you have that sinking feeling too when you found out that they were going to do a piecemeal approach?
Yes, obviously advocates had really hoped that the Senate bill would be taken up in the House, but we knew that was highly unlikely. So I think that moving forward, having it be a piecemeal approach is going to make it a much lengthier process, as well as a much more uncertain process. Yeah.
What pieces, now that we're talking about parts and pieces instead of a comprehensive whole, but what pieces are most important to women and children? One of the things that has been really sort of eye-opening to me is the lack of eyes opened inside the Beltway about who the immigration policy that they are writing will actually impact. Let me give you an example. I've had several meetings where I've walked into congressional offices and I've said, hey, we are here because at MomsRising we care about representing, in particular, moms who are often underrepresented in the legislative process. And we want to let you know, Congressperson, that over half of the people who will be impacted by immigration policy reform are women, and if you add kids to that, that's 2/3 of all people who are impacted. And I gotta tell you, Wendy, when I've said that statement, that if you add women and children, that's 2/3 of people who are impacted by immigration policy reform, I have literally seen a light bulb actually go off over the elected leaders and their staff's head, and they've said, what? Numerous times, not once, but numerous times. What? I never knew that so many women and children would be impacted. So one of the things I think is important, is also very scary, is that as these bits and pieces go through, that people will forget who they're actually writing legislative policy for, women and children. And have you seen that same type of problem of people not understanding the scope of the impact of the policy?
Yes, I have seen the same light bulbs go off when we talk about children in meetings, and so it's kind of scary sometimes when you think about that. A lot of times policies are written for that aren't written with enough consideration given to those that it's going to impact. And we've seen over the years, both as far in previous attempts at immigration reform and in current immigration policy, that the issues that truly impact women and children have been an afterthought and really haven't been specifically considered or considered in a targeted way. And because of that, we've seen so many women and children negatively impacted by our immigration policies, as well as left out of certain opportunities within immigration policy. And so I think what's really important for women and children in any immigration reform that moves forward is that it does consider their interests and their needs, and ensures that, for instance, when there's with a pathway to citizenship, that it's affordable and is accessible to as many women as possible, and that includes women that are domestic workers or stay-at-home mothers who may not be able to show documentation of their previous work experience, and that's something that we have worked very hard to try to get included into the Senate bill, and something that needs to be something that's going to be accessible to women. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see women left out and continue to see families broken up.
And I have to ask, in the bits and pieces that are now the broken up sort of immigration policy reform that is about to be reviewed by the House, do you see a spot for women and children? Where are you seeing women and children fitting into those parts and pieces?
Well, so far the bills that have been introduced have been largely on the enforcement side. For instance, one of the bills that's already been passed through committee, the SAFE Act, which is basically another heavy law enforcement bill that would terrorize communities and increase the use of local law enforcement agencies on implementing immigration policy, which many law enforcement agencies themselves are opposed to. And we've seen in many communities already how that has a negative impact on women and children. So right now we're very concerned because a lot of the conversations have been more about enforcement and as well as bills that focus on allowing potential future immigrants outside the country to come in based on skills versus maybe family ties are also worrisome. But just very recently, just yesterday, we have heard that there are some Republicans in the House that are interested in drafting a piece of legislation similar to the DREAM Act, which would be very, obviously benefit children is apparently the goal for undocumented children to provide some sort of pathway to citizenship or some sort of relief. But we haven't seen any details about that, and we are concerned because we don't want to see any bill that introduced on the House side that's weaker than the DREAM Act that we currently have in the bill that was passed in the Senate, which was very strong and will definitely provide that hope and that opportunity that we've been trying to get for so many children for so many years. So, the good news is that there has been some efforts, that are currently already underway to focus on undocumented children, on the Dreamers. But we just want to remind all members in the House that even Dreamers themselves they want something for their parents as well and for their families, because this
exactly. Now, what other provisions should we be on the lookout specifically for children? What else do we need to be watching to make sure it gets in?
Well, we need to be making sure that there's changes in immigration law so that immigration judges can make decisions with regards to removing an immigrant or allowing someone to enter the country based on hardship to children. In the past, immigration judges haven't been able to consider hardship to children in those types of decisions, and that's one of the reasons why we've seen so many children separated from their mothers and fathers as a result of deportation or the inability of somebody to re-enter the country. We also need to ensure that for those who qualify for legalization, that there's access to health care and other safety net programs, because we know that when parents are unable to access programs on behalf of their children, or they can't be eligible themselves, there's a lot of confusion, and a lot of times even U.S. citizen children that live in mixed legal status families won't have access to critical basic needs such as health care or nutrition assistance or what have you. And we also need to make sure that there is a unique pathway to citizenship for Dreamers that allows them to to obtain citizenship as soon as possible. And we also need to make sure that the parent that what's currently in the Senate bill that we really hope that we see in a final bill is that parents who have been removed from the country already, because we know, just over the past 2 years alone, over 200,000 mothers and fathers of U.S. citizen children have been removed from the country. And we want those parents to be able to come back, reunite with their families, and get on a pathway to citizenship.
That's definitely really more than 7 sub-bills. I'm very worried, even as I hear you talk about the importance of all of these different particular pieces that need to get together. I'm increasingly worried about the actual separation of the comprehensive policy into different parts. As you're saying, what we need to have in, and those are all very important parts that need to be in immigration policy reform. As you're saying them out loud right here, right now, on this show, does it make you increasingly worried about the path that the House is taking, or are you feeling reassured that we can get it all in the House?
Well, I think many of us continue to worry, but we also have to, have to be realistic about, kind of dealing with trying to work with the cards that we've been dealt. So if the approach in the House is going to be a piecemeal approach, then we're going to have to work with that and hope that ultimately, if we get to a point where there'll be a conference between those bills and the Senate bill, that we'll be able to end up with a final bill that truly does protect the interest of women and children. But it's definitely going to make it much harder.
Yeah, absolutely, especially as you're saying right now that the majority of bills that have been introduced thus far in the House are about enforcement and nothing to do with women and children, nothing to do with the fact that moms in particular are often working moms, regardless of they're paid or not paid. The labor of moms, of stay-at-home moms, is incredibly important in raising families. And if that's not recognized, that's a big deal. Domestic workers, very important. People who are taking care of our elderly and our young children and other places need really to have a real path to citizenship as well. And then there's the whole issue that you brought up, which is that there are 5 million children living in fear every day of being separated from their parents, and that is not okay. So I am excited, Wendy, that you are on this issue. You're on top of it. You're tracking who's doing what, when, and where, because it is complicated, particularly as it's broken down into its various parts and pieces. And I'm wondering, Wendy, if you have advice for our listeners about what they can do to make sure that women and children are not forgotten, to make sure that the immigration policy reform that does go through isn't just about border security, but it's also about human rights. What can people do?
Well, I think folks can do a variety of different things. Obviously, the advice that lots of people always give is to contact your member of Congress. And I know that doesn't sound very exciting sometimes, but it really makes a difference. And we go into meetings and we ask, who are you hearing from? What calls are you getting on this issue? And they track that every day. And obviously, it's very important for them to hear from their constituents. And if they hear from more and more people, and I think women have a particularly powerful voice given the number of women voters in the U.S. and across party lines, I think it's very important for them to know that women, that women, not just immigrant women, that all women do care about immigration reform that protects children and families, and children, women, and families. And I think it's also helpful to send a letter to the editor in any local paper you have, to talk to your friends about it. I think, you mentioned the light bulb going off and offices that you have, and meetings that you have with Hill offices. But I think, light bulbs also go off when I talk to friends of mine who don't maybe follow this issue very well and are mostly influenced by the media on this and don't really think about what the implications are for our communities and for people that we know that are our neighbors, that are going to school with our children. I mean, these are immigrants that are part of our community, and a lot of people don't understand that there isn't a line that people can get into, that how many women and children would be impacted by immigration reform, and don't really understand what's at stake because they just don't really understand the process. And it's totally understandable that they don't, because it's immigration is a very complicated topic. But I think a lot of people get it when someone talks to them about it, and it's important for us to build the will amongst our friends and our communities as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the point you raised about there right now not being a legal roadmap to citizenship for anyone who's here is an important point, and we want to make sure that any immigration policy reform that passes the House and the Senate actually has a legal roadmap for citizenship so that people can get in line, can do the right thing, and can move forward on an actual roadmap to have the end product that we all want. Thank you so much for being on with us today, Wendy. It was a delight talking with you. It was also important to hear how you are addressing immigration policy reform and all of the complexities as it moves through the House and Senate. And I hope to have you back on again soon to give us an update. We're going to take a quick break, but stick around because we'll be right back with our next guest, Sonia Torres. She's going to share with us what you can do with your children during the summer to keep them occupied, educated, and engaged. You've been listening to Breaking Through with Kristin Rowe-Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising on the We Act Radio Network, and we will be back in just a quick flash.
My name is Joe Thompson. I'm 29 years old and I have a career that I love as a systems analyst. Career. It still sounds cool to say that word. I never could have gotten on this path without a college degree. And if the college me were here, he'd tell you.
I never would have gotten to college without Big Brothers Big Sisters. I could have ended up anywhere, on the streets even. But college? Joe Thompson? Not likely. My big brother helped me out. He taught me I could do anything, at a time when a lot of people were saying just the opposite.
And to a 7-year-old, that means a lot. My big brother's name is Phil. And Phil is the reason that this 7-year-old grows up to be a systems analyst.
Whether you donate money or time, you're helping Big Brothers Big Sisters help a child. And that can last a lifetime. Start something today at bigbrothersbigsisters.org. Brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Ad Council.
I'm a third grade teacher.
I'm a school bus driver.
I am a parent.
I am a teacher's aide, and I agree to be identified
as a caring adult who pledges to help bullied students.
I will listen carefully to all students who seek my help
and act on their behalf
to put an immediate stop to bullying.
I will work with other caring adults to create a safe
learning environment for all the students in my school.
In my school.
In my school.
In my school.
I'm Dennis Van Rokel, president of the National Education Association. Help us create safe, bully-free learning environments for all students. One caring adult can make all the difference. Be that adult and take the pledge at nea.org/bullyfree. Adults have the power to stop bullying in our schools.
It starts with me.
It starts with me.
It starts with me.
It starts with me.
Bully free. It starts with me.
Visit nea.org/bullyfree. A message from the National Education Association.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.
Breaking Through with Kristin Rowe-Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising on the We Act Radio Network. We have a fabulous show for you today, and I'm excited about the guest that's coming on right now. We have Sonia Torres. She is director of Summer Search. Summer Search helps parents find places that are enriching, fun, and engaging for their kids to be during the summer. Welcome, Sonia.
Hi, thank you.
I'm so glad you're on. I have a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old, and I tell you, my entire parenting life has been really, really, really stressful in the summer because we have summer program opportunities that are too expensive, that are not long enough, that are, not exactly the right fit for kids, but it's actually hard to find the exact right fit for kids in the summer. Can you tell us a little bit about Summer Search?
Sure. Yeah, actually, Summer Search is a national nonprofit youth development organization. We work specifically with low-income students because they amongst a lot of all students, you rarely have opportunities to experience summer trips, and so we work with them to really transform what they believe is possible for themselves. So we've been around for 20 years. And here in the Bay Area, but as I mentioned, we're national in 7 different cities now, and so we work with these students to develop skills and character traits that they need to become college educated and leaders in their community. And part of that experience in our program is to send them on these really amazing summer trips where they get an opportunity to sometimes for the first time, because many of these are first generation college students, they have never been, for instance, to Outward Bound in the wilderness, and so these trips are really an amazing experience for them and really helps enrich their overall kind of education and opens their worldview. And so it's a great program, and I'm proud to be a part of it. I work with.
I'm so excited. So can you tell us a little bit about where you're sending the kids? What types of trips? What type of engagement are you offering to children and teens?
Yeah. The types of trips usually involve 2 different trips. And so the first one, and because we do a long-term kind of investment with these students, starting from their sophomore year in high school through all the way through to college. So the first trip usually happens in their junior year, and that's within here in the U.S. to partnerships, like I said, with North Carolina Outward Bound. They're usually wilderness and kind of related trips where we partner with those organizations to really find opportunities and spaces for these kids to be a part of it. The second trip usually happens right before they go off to college, and that's an international trip, and they can be anywhere in the world, from places in Africa as well as Latin America and South America, where they go and it's more service-oriented, and they're taking part in some sort of activity where they're working with the local communities and really spending time, and these trips usually last, 3 to 4 weeks.
So of course, the first question is, how do parents sign up? Do you have to live in one of the 7 cities? How do you get engaged?
Yeah, no, it's really, it's a great question. So our program is actually more based on partnerships we have with high schools. So our students actually get into the program through recommendations within their high school. So it's not, unfortunately, something that can just be something parents can go and sign up for.
Well, the first step could be to transfer to one of the high schools. You have to move your
Yeah.
whole house, transfer to a high school.
Yeah,
I'm teasing.
no, I mean,
that would be very difficult. But do you have a database online so you can see what high schools actually do have the opportunity?
Yeah, we do. We have on our website, which is www.summersearch.org, and if you go there, you'll see our different locations, and within those, you'll see our kind of partner schools and our supporters, but our partner schools are those, and they're usually organized by district. So we're in, for instance, Boston, Seattle, here in the Bay Area, in Silicon Valley, in the North Bay, in Philadelphia. So we're growing, and we're hoping to be in more cities, but, that's where you can find all of that information on our website.
That's perfect. Now, let's talk about you for a minute. What got you interested in this? Did you go on Outward Bound yourself, or how did you become passionate about this issue? I am really excited to be a part of Summer Search. I just joined earlier this year, and the reason I joined is because it's really, for me, a return to my roots. I've been doing communications for many, many years now, and I had previously worked for an international organization, but my connection to Summer Search's mission has more to do with kind of being first-generation college student myself. And I do love to travel, and I have thankfully been given the opportunity to go to a lot of amazing places, both here in the U.S. and internationally. But Summer Search really works hard to give these kids these opportunities to really expand their worldview, and so I'm just thrilled to be a part of it, and I'm excited actually to announce that we're going to have a kind of new look and feel. So for those who are visiting our website today, it's going to look very different in a few months because we're, like I said, growing and improving, so there's more to come, and I'm excited to be a part of that. That's exciting. So how did traveling to a different country impact your worldview and your educational outcomes? Can you share with us what that change meant to you personally? Because I'm willing to bet you're bringing that personal change directly to your work with Summer Search.
Yeah, you're right. I am. I have to say, travel has really, really been the biggest influence, I think, in my approach to people and interactions, because, you go and you observe other cultures, and it's really enriching, and it's amazing because you start to recognize kind of how small you are in a really, really, really big place. For me, coming back, it's only helped me in my relations with others and relating to others and being patient and really understanding kind of perspectives. And so when I first traveled, I actually will admit I consider my first travel experience from Southern California to Northern California. I was born and raised in L.A., and I went to Berkeley for college, for undergrad, right, from high school, which was great, and I feel honored to have gotten to the school, but it had more to do with being on a campus that was so diverse and so different from where I had come from, and that's really parallel to what a lot of these students at Summer Search experience, where it's a little homogenous. It's you grow up with what you know, and then all of a sudden you're placed in a situation where, wow, there's so many amazing people around you who are smart and from other places and sharing their stories, and you become a better person for knowing them, and you grow. So I consider my first travel experience the campus of UC Berkeley.
I love that. And not only does it open eyes to the diversity of our planet, but also to the diversity of role models, of different ways of being, of different ways of expected outcomes in life. I think that's something that's also important, is you talk about Summer Search and about moving through different countries and through different places in our own country. Have you seen that happen with your students as well, them find different role models?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, so when I first came on board, I had the fortunate opportunity to work on our annual report. And so we included some stories of students that I had an opportunity to speak to, and a lot of what they mentioned about what impacted and really benefited them from their interaction experience in Summer Search was the fact that we have mentors that work really closely with them, and these are professional mentors. These aren't volunteer. These are on staff full-time who work with them through the years and become those role models for them because they see themselves in these mentors. And so what ends up happening, amazingly, though, is that the students, as I mentioned, sometimes the first in their families to go to school, but, maybe the eldest of their siblings, then in turn become that role model because they've been able to see the behavior modeled for them and have that encouragement and support system and circle of support that our mentor, coupled with their parents and their teachers, really offer them, and so they in turn become the role models in their community. So it's kind of definitely a paying it forward as well as a giving back that ends up happening when they become those college-educated leaders. So I definitely have started to see it. I've started those conversations. I'm looking forward to getting to know more of our students and seeing that transformation happen.
I love it. I love it. Well, for those listeners out there, please take a look at www.summersearch.org. See if there's a Summer Search in your area and support it even if it's not. Thanks so much for being on, Sonia.
Thank you, Kristin.
We're going to take a quick break, but stick around because right back we'll be having our next guest, Gloria Pan, who's going to share how MomsRising delivered cows, yes, cows, to Congress. You've been listening to Breaking Through with Kristin Rowe-Finkbeiner, that's me, powered by MomsRising on the We Act Radio Network. We'll be back in just a quick flash.
Let me tell you who to blame. Blame the boy lying at your feet, his body oozing life through the hole in his stomach where the bullet tore him apart. Blame him for challenging you, for not looking away and for not backing down when you pulled out the gun. Blame your mother for bringing you into this world when she was but a kid herself and for dragging you up, not bringing you up. Blame society for not giving you hope. Blame your father for not being there, the man who looked after himself instead of looking after you. Blame the gun in your hand for making you a target, for making you more likely to be picked on. Blame the dead boy, blame your mother, blame society, blame your father, blame the gun, blame anyone but yourself for not being strong enough to put down the gun, to break the cycle.
Take Action News is proud to be sponsored by Healthcare for America Now. HCAN is a national coalition of more than 1,000 groups in 50 states, representing 30 million people. HCAN works to promote, defend, implement, and improve the Affordable Care Act at both the state and federal levels. They also try to protect Medicare and Medicaid, increase corporate accountability, and confront forces that seek to take away critical services. HCAN believes in creating jobs, not cutting programs people depend on. HCAN runs comprehensive issue campaigns that mobilize people at the grassroots and define the public debate. HCAN is fighting to protect, implement, and improve the new health care law through national and state-based legislative and regulatory campaigns built on grassroots action, public education, communications, policy analysis, and groundbreaking research. HCAN has become a respected voice and national leader on health care while continuing to focus on aggressive field activity. Support HCAN, Healthcare for America Now.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.
Welcome back to Breaking Through with Kristin Rowe-Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising on the We Act Radio Network. We have a great show for you today, and we're ending up with the one, the only, Gloria Pan, Senior Moms Rising Campaign Director, who led the effort to bring cows to Congress this week. Welcome, Gloria. Gloria, I'm so excited that you can be on. We had quite an experience this week telling Congress with small little cows, that is children dressed as cows. We didn't actually bring real live cows, but children dressed as cows, telling Congress, don't be cowed by the gun lobby. Let's get moving on background checks on gun purchases. Gloria, you were there all day. You did massive work to make this happen. There were dozens and dozens and dozens of people who were activists visiting offices in the U.S. Senate. In fact, we hit more than half of the offices in the U.S. Senate in person with small cows in tows. What's your main takeaway? What was your favorite part of the cow experience?
I would have to say the favorite part was the fact that we were very visible and so many senators were so welcoming of us. They were stopping and they were talking to our members, and I think that we were really heard and we were really visible, and our purpose to make it clear that moms and families are still very committed to gun safety reform, and the fact that we really would like to see background checks. I think that we made that loud and clear, and we actually were able to deliver it personally to many senators.
One of my favorite moments was when Senator Manchin, who actually is obviously the author of the Manchin-Toomey bill, which provides for background checks for all gun purchases, wanted to come down and actually speak to Moms Rising members and volunteers, to speak to the babies who were dressed up as cows, and to speak to the media about the importance of keeping the pressure on, about the importance of addressing the everyday issue of gun violence, where the CDC reports that more than 30 people are killed per day by guns, murdered per day by guns, that is, and about the importance of not forgetting about the daily gun violence. And what was exciting in particular to me about that was that the senator asked us, could he speak with our members? And what did you make of that, Gloria? Do you think this is a change in terms of people's attitude about the importance of addressing this issue?
Well, Senator Manchin has been a wonderful champion of gun safety. He has been a leader in making it clear that on this issue, you have to put the interests and the concerns of families and communities above those of special interests, particularly the gun lobby. And, you know, Senator Manchin is from West Virginia, and for him to take this position, given the fact that there is such a strong culture of guns in West Virginia, it's not easy for him. He gets a lot of pushback in his state. So he is committed as ever, and we were honored to have him be with us and to lead the way in showing that, in this country, families and communities have to come first.
Yeah. And I think if you ask me about one of my favorite moments, I want to just describe to the audience one of my favorite moments. And then, Gloria, I'm going to ask you to describe yours, so be ready. But one of my favorite moments was we were in the atrium of the Hart Building, which is a place in Washington, D.C., inside the Beltway, where a lot of the U.S. Senate offices are located. There was this giant sort of 3-story black sculpture, and we were standing with dozens of children in black and white cow outfits. If you want to see pictures, you can look on our Facebook page, MomsRising.org Facebook page. And there's lots of these children just sort of crawling around, walking around in their cow outfits, as well as dozens of moms and dads and a lot of reporters. And as Senator Manchin got up to talk, a little tiny baby wearing a cow outfit crawled sort of around his feet and under his legs. And, you just really brought home to me, as we see these crawling babies mixed with politicians, the importance of every politician realizing that the policies that they're making impact real people, real live people outside the Beltway. And there's no way to ignore that as babies crawl at your feet as you speak. And so that was one of my very, very, very favorite moments. What was yours?
Well, I have to say, Kristin, that, in general, all day, it was just so awesome and inspiring to have the visual of all of these really cute children and babies in their cow outfits walking around the halls of the Senate, and how welcoming everybody was. So, we actually have photos on the Moms Rising Facebook page. There's a whole album devoted to it, and we invite everybody to come and check it out. But I have to say that one of my favorite moments, there were many favorite moments, was actually walking around on that day. There were many senators sort of wandering the halls and seeing us, and we ran into Senator Schumer, and we actually gave him one of our cows. And one of our members are like, "Oh, so are you going to name the cow?" And Senator Schumer said, "Yes, I am going to name this cow Safety." And I thought that was so great.
That is
so that
great.
was one of my favorites, yes.
That's a good moment. I love that moment. So for listeners, we were delivering stuffed cows. I wish I had one right now to hold up to show people, but they're about 12 inches, very fluffy, very cuddly, very cute, along with a book of member messages, member stories from every state in the nation, telling the U.S. Senate, telling the U.S. House, don't be cowed by the gun lobby. Get moving on background checks on gun sales. And then we also had a little keychain with a very cute cow on it that said the same message, so that nowhere, no how could anybody miss what we were saying. We underscored our messaging in multiple ways. And you're right, Gloria, as we were walking through the halls, as we were visiting offices, people were delighted to see the children, the moms, the volunteers, and also we were able to meet with people who came forward and said things like Senator Dianne Feinstein said, which is, you are making a difference. We heard over and over again that being there, walking those halls, was making a difference, that actually members of Congress want to hear from moms. They want to see the children that are impacted by the policies. And so that piece of welcome, I think, is really important, because I have to say, Gloria, as I looked around, if I was walking the halls and I looked around and did a 360, which I did a couple of times, I noted that, it's about 90% men in those hallways. Most of the lobbyists are men. Only 18% of Congress are women. And so really, it sticks out. It makes a statement when women and children come through. Did you notice that as well?
I did notice it. And I have to say also, Kristin, that because we actually had a very large group of Moms Rising members bringing their children, right? And so the other side of it also was, it was just wonderful that, we were seeing this teaching moment of our next generation of American citizens who are learning how to speak up for themselves. And, of course, the infants were maybe not quite getting that message. But the 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, we even had a 12-year-old with us, they definitely were getting that message, and they were very, very, you can see that they were very excited to be there.
And for listeners, if you want to get engaged in this type of activity on gun policy, on paid family leave, on immigration policy reform, sick days, or any economic security issues for women and families, including health care, just sign up at MomsRising.org. It's free. We will send you alerts, and we are active not only in the U.S. Capitol, bringing out our children and coming ourselves, but also in state capitals and cities across the country. So there's ample opportunities for you to also have a similar experience. We won't won't make you dress up as a cow every time, and you don't have to do any dressing up if you don't want to. But the thing that I think is important is that democracy isn't a spectator sport. And showing our children that their voice matters, showing ourselves and reminding ourselves that our voice matters in democracy is a big, important part of getting our nation to work better for women and families. Gloria, what kind of hope do you have for background checks for gun purchases moving forward?
Well, that measure in the Senate failed by only 5 votes. 5 votes, okay? And many of those senators who voted no against them actually went back, and they experienced incredible backlash. Their voters were very upset that they had actually voted against the general will of the people, because all over the country, the range of support for background checks went from like 70% to like 94%. It's actually a huge majority. So it was only 5 votes. We only needed to change 5 votes. And I hope that many of those senators will remember us, will remember our message, will remember our kids. And when they get a second chance to vote again, they will vote yes on background checks. It's only going to take 5 of them.
I love it. I love your optimism. I think that we can win the next time. I do think it'll come up sometime in the next 6 months, and we will be there cheering them on to do the right thing for their constituents. Thank you so much for being on with us today, Gloria. It was a delight talking with you, as always, but also I have to say that was one of my most favorite experiences this week, going with Little Cows to visit U.S. Senate offices with you. So bravo, standing ovation, and amazing job working on this gun policy campaign. I just love working with you every day.
Well, keep on moving, Kristin.
Thank you. Everybody out there, listeners, keep on moving forward. And we are done with our show for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've tackled a lot of topics, from paid family leave passing in Rhode Island, hearing a champion speak about how change can happen, getting the latest update on immigration policy reform and what you can do, and even talking about new summer programs for teens. Tune in next week as we again tackle the top topics for women, children, and family, and as we also look at the news from the perspective of women, which is too often ignored. We're going to take a deep look at the current news and how it impacts you. You've been listening to Breaking Through with Kristin Rowe-Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising on the We Act Radio Network. We'll catch you next week.